to get to enjoy. Are you going to come up here? Yeah. If you see a stool, you grab it, honey. I am very pleased with getting to be here today. And we are doing something today and next Sunday. Good morning, Cheyenne. I was wondering. Anyhow, we are doing something today and next Sunday. I'm very excited about. You're going to be so much taller than me, but that's all right. And if you haven't seen her, met her, know her, whatever, this is my very tall daughter. Will you bring one of those black ones? It's the same as what I have, and I won't feel as small. Because right now I'm feeling pretty. I'm a little intimidated. Anyhow, we are going to be having Youth Sunday next week. And thank you so very much, Sandy. I appreciate you, honey. Now we are equals. That's what I've been waiting for. Anyhow, next Sunday is going to be Youth Sunday. So this Sunday we're doing shadowing, which simply means the youth and young adults who are going to be in this are going ahead and going to be with the people to see the job for what it is that they are supposed to be doing. All right? We have some people have been working and not able to be here, so we've kind of let them off the hook a little bit. And then we have other people who can't ever get off the hook for anything. So if you look around, like back in the box, we've got Peyton and we've got Charles. They're working computers and sound, and it's just going to be great. So they're in here with us today. We've got Matthew back here because the teenage class actually isn't having class today. They're all out somewhere in different classrooms, learning different jobs. Matthew, if the sun is frying the side of your face, you are more than welcome to shut that blind. While you're at it, if you'll come up here and shut this one, Charlotte will appreciate it. She's not in here yet, but she shuts it every Sunday. So we'll just go ahead and take care of that. But this is my lovely daughter, Leah, who is part of the young adult class, and she is going to be teaching next week. I'll still be right here beside her, but she's shadowing today. She'll probably have comments today because she takes a lot after her mama. God love her. We just have comments about everything, whether it needs to be commented on or not. You never can tell with us, Ella. So we are going to go ahead and get into this lesson. Before we get too far into it, though, I want you guys to know last night was absolutely so much fun. We had a get together here at church. It was our fall festival, and we had some trunk or treat stuff going on one side, and then our teenage and young adults, they had a lock in, and the church is still standing. On the way here, I did have I was a little bit trepidatious. I was thinking, I hope it's still above the ground and not burnt to a pile. I found out it was when we pulled in. I'm like, whoo, it's still standing. So. And coffee was already made. And I loved it. When I stepped out of my car to walk up, the door was unlocked and it swung open. And Sister Morgan was like, good morning. And I'm like, I like this. I could get used to this. So next Sunday, I've told them they need to stay again and have the coffee made and greet me again as I step out of the car with a good morning and let me just walk in ready to go. It probably won't happen, but that's okay. It was wonderful for today, and I'm going to enjoy every second of it. So we do need to go ahead and take up our tithes and offerings. I'm going to ask Matthew. Sammy, if you wouldn't mind to take up the tithes and offering, but I'm going to have Matthew to go with you because Matthew is shadowing an usher, right? All right. So he's going to stick with you if you don't mind. You can go ahead and go on back. And we're going to have prayer over our lesson and our offering as well as me. I covet your prayers just simply because, well, I need them every day of my life. And if you ever got to know me, you'd really understand why. Ain't that right, Sue? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. We'll remember your friend who had the heart attack. Do remember Mary Shelton. She's out today. Her daughter Tanya has COVID, and is pretty sick. So pray for that family. They'll overcome all of that very quickly. Anybody else want to? Absolutely, Sister Peggy. Sister Peggy, she is a tough woman, all right? And she is trying to get over, she broke her collarbone. It's one break clear through. She has to have a plate put in, but before they canceled her surgery for right now because they want her to see a heart doctor first. So let's pray that everything can be expedited because she's dealing with a lot of pain. All right. I know that we have several unspoken in here. I know several individuals right in here that God knows what those prayer requests are. All right. So I'm going to ask Aaliyah, since she's up here shadowing. I do know she doesn't have to shadow to pray. I know my kid. She's a little prayer warrior, and I'm so proud of that. I'm going to ask her to pray over all of these things, and if you don't mind, bow your heads and join in prayer.
Lord, thank you for everything you've done for us. Thank you for letting us gather here today all together, getting to see our church family and friends. Please be with all of these prayer requests. Let your will be done in each of these situations, regardless of our feelings toward your solution. We love you, Lord, and let us take in all of the stuff that is taught here today. Let only your words be spoken through the teacher, and let us apply it to our lives and show everyone with our actions what we've learned. We love you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Now, Sammy makes sure to teach him how to shake down people for every dollar they have. No, I'm just playing. And if you have your cellular device, you can just take a picture of the QR code that's on screens. It'll take you straight to our giving site, go straight into the church. It's wonderful, easy. You can use a debit card, credit card, whatever card, as long as it works. And while they're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and tell you about a little bit about our lesson today. We have quite the lesson today. And you know, when we were talking about Youth Sunday and how some of the teenagers would be in here during this class, as they're being in here, this is something that, you know what, it does plague a lot, especially when you start hitting in those teenage years and up. We didn't plan this out on the date. It just happened that way because you know what? God knows. The title of our lesson, Pornography is Destructive. Let me tell you, you can barely go and see a movie whatsoever without some form of nakedness or nudity taking place in it. It is absolutely, it's pitiful. When I was younger, there was no way under the sun I would have ever imagined our society being like it is today. There are some TV shows after a certain time at night. They let language just fly like crazy. To hear GD on a TV show, that was like, oh, we can't believe that's going to happen. That's never happening again. We're never watching that TV show again. Well, now you can barely turn on the TV without hearing something, seeing something, the perverseness that's going on. And the more it's put out there, the more comfortable we get with it. All right. And as far as our younger people, if you are in high school, if you are in college, oh my goodness. That's all I know to say about that. Because it just absolutely it's just filtered into every aspect. And it's such a sad situation. When I started studying this morning, when I started studying, period, but I went over it again this morning. There's some things that just really jumped out, and I had to grab the highlighter and the pen, so my book's all marked up again. That's not a bad thing. But I want to go through the three areas that we're going to look at today, biblically speaking. I want to tell you about our focuses today because this is a very, very important lesson that we need. And not only do we need it individually, we need it to share with others. All right, first, coming out of Matthew chapter 5, Sexual lust is sin. And we're going to talk about lust. What is lust? Where does it come from? Things like that. We'll talk about that in a moment. Secondly, consequences of evil desire. We have consequences, all right? There can be good consequences, but there can be bad consequences. A lot of times people will get stuck on one or the other. And then third, we need to guard our eyes and our hearts. All right? The devil is trying to take over. That's going to be coming out of Job, Numbers, and 1 Corinthians. Our central truth today, God demands sexual purity. Our focus, acknowledge that pornography is sinful and commit to sexual purity. We'll discuss what that actually is in a minute. Evangelism emphasis. As Christians live wholesome lives, they reflect the purity of Christ. And then our golden text comes from Proverbs 4:23. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Now, on this very first page, there were some things that jumped out, some facts. You guys know I love facts. And there were some facts given on this one that actually blew me away. All right? First and foremost, the pornography industry actually makes more money than ABC, CBS, and NBC combined. You're talking about the three major TV programs, the actual creators, producers, three of them combined, and they still don't bring in as much money as porn. Secondly, over 120,000 searches take place every day for child pornography. That's not even regular porn, that's child pornography. Third, those addicted, because let me tell you, it can be addictive, very much so. We talk about addictions, and when we talk about addictions, we're always like, ooh, drugs, drinking, smoking, all these things. No, when you have five senses, touch, there's a sense. Hearing, where's your ear? There it is. Another sense. Taste. Do I have anybody addicted to any? Well, how many people had your coffee this morning? Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's jump all over that one. Anybody have some sweet tea sometime between yesterday or today? How many people go 2 days without a sweet tea and say, I am going to die if I don't get myself a glass of sweet tea? Maybe it's chocolate. Maybe it's some form of candy. I mean, there are many things that we can have addictions to that aren't necessarily drugs, but they can be addictive. That's just talking about taste. How about what you see? All right? I mean, we have so many things. What we put into our body, it might enter in through the ear. It might enter in through the nose with smell. It may enter in the eyes with looking at it. Might enter in through the mouth with the taste. All right? It causes physiological and psychological changes in the brain. Watching pornography causes your frontal lobe to shrink. Your frontal lobe controls a whole lot of stuff. Do you know that another thing that can cause your frontal lobe to shrink? Smoking pot, smoking weed, drinking. All right, many different drugs. But I had never read or studied on the fact that looking at something addictive could cause the frontal lobe to shrink. But it can. So you're talking about memory loss. You're talking about basic skills of knowing things to do. You're talking about brain damage. This can cause brain damage. Oh, this one is a big one. Now, this one as Christians, we usually do say, well, I realize that. If a person is hooked on pornography, They are 300 times more likely to cheat on their spouse. Just let that sink in for a minute. 300 times more likely to cheat. And then they did do a survey with women, and 1/3 of women in this survey admitted to watching porn at some time. They didn't give me any results on the men. But let me tell you, it's a little bit too convenient. And let me tell you how this one actually hit very close to home. I was working at this school. I'd been at this school for several years, so I knew every member of the faculty. They were my friends. There were some in particular closer than others. You know how it is at work. And this one man in particular, he had very good discipline with his students. He was an upper grade teacher. And there was this one kid in particular, oh boy, he would just give a fit to everybody. And I had this boy in 6th grade. And this gentleman had him in 7th and 8th grade. And the other teachers, literally, when this boy would cause problems, they would come and get myself or this other gentleman, and they'd say, you guys are going to have to go take care of your kid because he's causing this. Because we were the only two people he actually listened to. Okay? So, of course, we would talk about this kid like we were his mom and dad. You know, well, he needs to do this. And we'd talk with the kids, say, listen, you've got to do this. Because he didn't have mom and dad at home that wanted to demonstrate care and concern. Come to find out, we were at school late one day. I was working with another group of teachers. And the principal got an emergency phone call, said, hey, I've got to go over to, and it was that colleague of mine, the young man, said, I've got to run over to his house. There's an emergency. He called and said for me to come straight there after school was out. He had left school early that day. Come to find out, the young man, this teacher friend of mine, had gotten a phone call. Now, a couple of weeks before, he had brought a computer to me and said, hey, can you repair my computer? I said, well, what's wrong with it? He said, lightning ran in on it. And I told him, I said, that's pay grade higher than mine. I'm more of your troubleshooter. You're going to have to take it to an actual professional that can replace power supplies, yada, yada. So, okay. Come to find out, when they went in and started replacing the power supply and working on the computer, it showed up where he had been doing searches on child pornography. So he was going to be arrested. He was a school teacher. The police called him at work. They said, we can come and arrest you in front of all these students, or you can come and turn yourself in. He said, don't come and arrest me. I'll turn myself in. So he left work, did not tell anybody what was going on. He just said, hey, got a phone call, got an emergency got to deal with. And he signed himself out, got him a sub. He left. He went straight to his house, and this is the story I was told later. He took his favorite suit and laid it out on his bed. He laid out his favorite necklace that he wanted them to put on him. He got everything arranged. He set up everything for where nobody would find him except for our principal. Our principal at that time was an old EMT. He had seen and dealt with just about everything, and this teacher knew it. That's why he called the principal. He wrote a letter apologizing to his mom and apologizing to any family members for his mistakes and all the things that he had done. And then he went into the backyard. He put on, there was a set of headphones found in the yard, hooked to, at this time, a disc player. And they said that he had taken a rifle and put it on the ground and propped it underneath, and he killed himself that day. It was absolutely devastating to many, many, many people. The children were devastated because they loved him. He was a great teacher. But he had this life away from school. It will destroy you. It destroyed him. My principal, knowing that I was a Christian person. A few days later, after the kids found out, that he wasn't coming back, they left all these messages all over his, not chalkboard, but whiteboard, of how much they loved him and they'd miss him and stuff like that. The janitor, nobody would go into that classroom. The principal came to me. He said, "Miss White, I know you believe in Jesus." I said, "Yes, sir. What do you need done?" He goes, "I need that classroom cleaned out." He said, "I can't get anybody to go in there." I said, "Nobody will go in this room." He goes, "No. They're all afraid of either being haunted or evil spirits or something like that in that classroom." I said, "Well, I've got a Jesus that's bigger than any of that." He said, I know that you do." He said, "And I know that you'll take care of it." I said, "Absolutely." So I got the job of going in and cleaning out my friend's classroom. Pornography can kill. Now, I want us to understand, though, sin is sin is sin. All sin is destructive. All sin is destructive. And we need to understand that. If I go around and I have bad language all the time, that's just as destructive as if I went out here and participated in this. But the Bible does make a bit of a difference, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, is the difference. Absolutely.
She was talking about how, sin is sin is sin, and that's absolutely true. And when we hear about porn, we hear about child pornography, we're like, oh my gosh, those are such different levels of saying, like, little things, of eating too much or something like that. But it starts small and it grows. That's what's so deadly about it, because you don't see it sneaking up. If you do have your commentary, look at the first sentence. It says, "We live in an age of instant gratification." That's meaning you have no restrictions about yourself. So little things, it doesn't mean just like looking up whatever you want. It does apply to that. But even little things, how your attitude looks, how your words sound, how you treat somebody, if you know that somebody is in a rough patch and you should go talk to them, but you're like, I just don't feel like it today. They'll be all right. Go on. It's talking about not having those restrictions on yourself. Yep. So the first task, or first one we're going into, is the sexual lust is sin. And just keep reflecting back to how that's not having restrictions on yourself. How that's just letting yourself run rampant without anything holding you back, like God's voice, God's words, good people around you.
I'm going to throw in that Leah has not studied this lesson. However, she's already teaching 2 pages over. Because it is all about, I want to be satisfied. I want to be satisfied right now. I am craving some chocolate. Where is it? I need a Mountain Dew. Have y'all ever felt like that? Reese cups, all right. Charlotte needs a Reese cup. Yours, a Pepsi.
Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Peppers. Yeah, I mean, and we get it, and we don't want it after a while. No, I need it right now. I need it now. Well, it's the same thing. That instant gratification, no, I want it right now. I don't want to take 2 hours to peel those potatoes. Okay, how many of us enjoyed the mashed potatoes last time we had a dinner here? Yeah, man, them good. You know why? Because I buy the Bob Evans pre-made, ready to go over at Big Food City. It takes 3 minutes in the microwave, and then after that 3 minutes, you take it out, you stir them, you slap them in for 2 more.
Put some butter on it.
Yeah, they're good. They found the salt shaker, praise Jesus. And they were good because I don't want to have to stand over there. Lord, you have to peel them for 30 minutes. Then you have to dice them up another 10 minutes. Then you're going to have to cook them things forever. How many times do you have to go back and you're going to have to take the fork, stick it in there, see if they come out crumbly, ready to mash them up. I try not to do it at all. That's why I go Bob Evans. You see what I'm saying? I learned that from Charlotte. She told me to get the Bob Evans. It was you.
It's me. I used to get.
Oh, okay. All right.
You can get personal sizes at Ingles. They come in 3 packs.
Yeah, Janie. The round ones are like this. Oh, I love those. Well, they put them out there for somebody, Janie.
Maybe after I read this, wait a minute, that's stealing, that's lust of the eye.
It's still, yeah, it's still a form of lust because lust is when
Replaced it.
you want something for yourself. But let's go ahead and read Matthew chapter 5. We're going to start with verse 27. It says, Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committeth adultery with her already in his heart. I'm going to pause right there because I want to talk to both men and women. All right. If you want somebody, you look at them and you're like, that looks good. I'd like to have me some of that. No. Okay, that's not how it rolls. But I want to talk about on the other side. Should you be putting it out there for everybody to see? And that's where we teach modesty. They're like, well, I'm modest. I'm wearing leggings. Excuse me. If they see every single curve of your body, what do they have left to their imagination? You know what I'm saying? Modesty is such an important thing.
Something else with modesty, though, it's yes, think about who could be looking at you. However, have more respect for yourself. You are worth 1,000 times more than those little bitty leggings so people can see your butt crack. That's not how it is. We're not trying to get that scrunch up there. Have more respect for yourself. You are so awesome. You are worth putting effort into yourself. Present yourself well. You are worth more than what another person could think of you. You're worth what God thinks of you. God doesn't give a crap about how he does care about what you show, but not for that reason. Know that you have a worth that's more than what you look like.
I'll never forget one day we went over to Big Waffle House in Greenville. We were going to have some breakfast. This is back when Leah was 16. And waitress comes up and they talk about everything under the sun, and they got to talking to Leah, and they said something about her boyfriends and all this kind of stuff. And at that time she's like, well, I don't have a boyfriend. They're like, oh, and they were going on talking about like sexual things. And she looked at the woman and she goes, ma'am, I haven't even had my first kiss yet. And I thought the woman would pass out. She looked at her, she went, what? Leah said, I haven't even kissed a boy. She said, honey, how old are you? Yeah, I had trained her that they all had cooties. Anyway, she looked at the waitress. She goes, I'm 16. And that waitress, she was like, you're telling me you're 16 years old and you've never kissed a boy? And Leah's like, no, I'm waiting. And that one did shock her. And you know how they holler out, smothered, covered, flap, top, tripped, whatever, on everything, they're calling out the orders. She immediately turns around. She goes into throwing out the orders, but she's going, girls, she's not had a first kiss. She's saving herself. She's 16 years old. I didn't know anybody did that anymore. And I was super proud to say, yes, I'm her mother. And no, I didn't threaten her life. Her daddy did a little bit, but I didn't. Anyway, we trained her according to the Word. And if you're trained according to the Word and you want to live up to what Jesus has for you, you won't give in to all this other stuff. You won't go around and think, man, I need to get satisfied. I've got the. When you hit as a teenager, dear Lord, what all needs to be satisfied. You're going to have thoughts. You're going to have feelings. You're going to have all the stupidity that you can possibly imagine being thrown at you by people that you don't even know, half of them. But they're going to be feeling free to come up and tell you whatever and make comments about you or different parts of you and all this kind of craziness. Because they haven't been taught how to no. Just say no. Wait. We don't believe in waiting. I don't want it now. I wanted it yesterday. Actually, I wanted it over a week ago. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's the same thing even in our society when you're talking about anything to do with the opposite sex. I don't want to have to wait until we get married. Well, I love them and they know I'm in love with them. That doesn't mean it's okay to do whatever. And we do teach that.
Has failed simply because when I first started dating David, I was convinced that, well, I'm a Christian and I believe in God, so sex is not going to be a temptation that I have to deal with. It's just going to be easy for me just to save myself for marriage. And, I didn't have to have that conversation with him. It was, assumed between the two of us. But
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how close you are to God.
That's
that
right.
Sexual sin will come knocking.
That's exactly
And
right.
the church, I feel like, you have to take responsibility for your own sins and for your own shortcomings, but the church needs to be preparing you. They need to be teaching you scriptures of flee fornication. For any man that sinneth, do it with his own flesh. They need to be teaching you stuff like that and saying, hey, you know what? It's going to be hard.
Yep.
But if you need counseling, come to me. Youth leaders don't need to have that, oh, that's so uncomfortable. Don't talk to me about that.
You've got to talk about it. You've got to. If you are going to be a leader for Christ, you've got to be able to bring His word out for people so they can understand it. All right? You've got to. We just about have everybody that was engaged married off at this point. The only, God love them, the next ones that everybody's picking at now is going to be Bryson and Ella. We look at these two, and if you're like me, I don't know why, but I've got them older than what they really are. I look at them, I see how they're both working, they're both, they've got it going on here, and I'm like, oh, they act like they're in their 20s. And then it hits me, they're still both teenagers. And they are facing some serious situations that society will be glad to throw out there. But look how convenient. But look at this. But look at this. Well, if it feels right, what could possibly be wrong with that? Nike's phrase of if it feels good, do it, they're wrong. Go ahead, Tammy.
When Christina, before she got married, where we get our nails done, when her and David first bought the house, they bought it probably a year before they got married.
Yep.
And so when you guys live fingernail places there all the time, oh, what you doing, blah, blah, blah. He said, whenever she bought the house, she told me, she said, oh, we just bought a house. He says, oh, that's so good. And he said, are you living together? And she said, no, we don't live together.
And that's a shock.
He lives there, and I stay with my mom, and we split the bills. He says, why are you paying bills and you don't live there? She said, because that's going to be my house.
Yeah.
And every time we would go, he'd be like, you living there now? She said, no, not till I'm married. And it was just like every time it was like they were encouraging her.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of her to stand her around and say no.
And I'm going to talk about her just a little bit more. My husband being pastor of the church, it is part of our spiritual duties that we counsel with people who are going to get married if we're the ones performing the ceremony. And I do say we on all this because my husband and I were one. We're not separate. We're one. So when he's the one doing the wedding, it's we are doing that wedding. I'm not going to stand up there and say, and do you take, and what do you say? No. But at the same time, we're one. And we were speaking with her, and we knew that they had had their home set up a year before they ever got married. And we're like, how does that work? And she goes, well, it's like this. As soon as I get off work, I drive to our house. I cook him supper. I stay until this time at night to where we've cleaned up the dishes, we cleaned up everything, and then I leave and I go home. And I'm like, you mean you stay that late at night? You drive all the way back, because it's not, a 5-minute drive. It's a good, jump down the road. And she goes, yeah. I said, that's awesome. And she goes, well, and I tell you what, and we were giving her some encouragement on standing her ground. And she said, it is very difficult when you've got everybody around you telling you, wouldn't it be easier if you just went ahead and moved in? Wouldn't it be easier if you just went ahead and lived there now with him? Wouldn't it make things much better that you didn't have to get up and drive all the way back? And she's like, I have to tell them no. She said, I even had to tell my own family members no. And she said, that one was the toughest for me. She said, I had to tell my own family members, no, I'm not doing that. And right then I thought, oh, my heavens, we've got some good young people in this church, young adults. We've got some good young adults and young people in this church.
And something else, I know we kind of look at young people on this one a lot of times, but there are more than just young people that are getting engaged, that are getting married, that are in relationships. And many times with young people, it's your first time. But with older people, you've been there, done that. And a lot of times it's kind of neglected of being like, you know what, I've already been there. What does it matter? This might be my second husband, might be my third. That doesn't take away from the waiting aspect. Because that's still going back to the lust, going back to about your... I don't know how to work that in. Condition of the heart. But it's going back to how do you view your relationship with this person? Are they worth waiting to where you are invested for the rest of your life? Or have you gotten everything out of them physically, and now you're just hoping your relationship and your fun times carry you through? How are you looking at your relationships? It's a hard thing to do, especially young people. Older people, it doesn't matter. What is the condition of your heart to where I want to glorify God in this relationship? I don't care if this is my third husband. I'm waiting because, you know what? I think God sent them to me. I think God has a plan for us to glorify His name through our relationship and our actions. It's what are you doing? What are you doing it for?
Absolutely. Janie. Yeah.
The old people have an alternative.
Yeah.
Commit your life to God. He said, if you can do that, that's wonderful, but it's better to marry than to burn.
Yeah.
And to understand this, I'm just coming to realization of these things at my age.
Yeah.
If I had been more steeped in His Word and listened closer to my parents and the Bible, then I wouldn't have had to go through. You suffer consequences of your actions, period. It says so here.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't have had to come to a conclusion at 64, 65 years old.
I'm still learning every day. Every day. You're never too old to learn. You're never too young to start learning. And that, I want to go back and finish up this Matthew 5. We read 27, 28, but I want you to look at 29. Here are some basic instructions if you're having a problem. Now, I want to point out, Matthew is in the New Testament. This is New Testament, what we're supposed to be guided by. And if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that the whole body should be cast into hell. But we're not willing because we want that gratification, that immediate fix. Yeah.
I'm looking at this realistically. We're not going to cut our hands off. We're not going to cut our eyes out. But if you're scrolling on Instagram, and I mean, me and Charlie, we actually did a little experiment. We took our For You pages, put them side by side. The males, and y'all know Charlie, he's a good guy, okay? He watches barbecue videos every day.
Every day.
So,
And
but
sends them to us.
exactly. But we put our For You pages beside each other. All we did was click on it, put it on the table. His stuff, it was a lot of just females. It was under the guise of like fashion and under the guise of fitness. However, you looked at mine, I actually watch little fashion videos because I have none. And then I also watch fitness videos. And my stuff was legit. His stuff, it was catfishing the whole time. I mean, it was awful. So it's not talking about literally cutting your hand off, literally cutting your eye out. However, if that Instagram For You page is setting you up to start looking things up on Google, you're going straight to Safari after that. Quit. Get away from Instagram. Delete it. And I know that's a big step. Sometimes you can get discouraged by that. Set a timer or there's a little thing on your phone you can do where it limits your time on that. Snapchat's sneaky, okay? You don't know what's coming up, and it will shock you. Take your time off of it. Get off of that stuff if it's tempting you. If there's a video game, I don't play video games, but I've heard stories. Step away from it. That's the equivalent to real life. Cut your hand off, pluck your eye out. Get away from the things that are tempting you. Get away, including people. And I know that's a rough one, but get away from those people. There are people that are like, oh, they look good. You can look at the menu, but you don't have to buy from it. That's not okay. I've been told that before. That's not cool. Yeah. That's not cool at all. So that's the real life, how you can apply that to you and your everyday.
With older women, I'll say grown women, not older women. But for grown women, it's called window shopping. Have y'all ever heard that phrase? I don't mind go window shopping. No thanks. I say the same thing every single time. If anybody's ever tried, Leah can attest to this. If she's ever saw some guy when she was back looking for a boyfriend and said, "Ooh, Mama, don't you think he's cute?" What's my phrase?
He looks nothing like your daddy.
Yep.
Sexual encounters. We have, all this trash on commercials and radio and all this other stuff that if you allow that to keep on going in, it is just going to take you further down that rabbit hole.
That's exactly right.
And end up with your, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
End up with being that 300 times more likely to cheat on a spouse is what it's going to end up.
Yeah.
And that is not what it's supposed to be. It leads to destruction. In 1 John 2:15, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. You see, lusting for something, having that desire for something that you shouldn't be having, that doesn't come from God. That comes from the devil. When you love someone, you are going to love all of them. You're not going to love how they make you feel physically by itself. You got to have the whole package. All right? I think I have a beautiful husband. And I'll tell him that. I'm like, Jimmy White, you're a beautiful man. And he'll say, it's time to get your eyes checked again. And we go back and forth on these kind of things. But you know what? I do think I have a beautiful man. You know why? I'm not interested in looking at another one. And when you are out in public, there are going to be people who come. An example, the other day, I was at work at a new job that I'm working on. There was this insurance guy came in. I went in, I signed up for some certain kind of helicopter kind of insurance. I don't know what it was. I thought it was a good deal. And he leaves, goes down the hallway. Another teacher comes walking up, and she's like, what was that I just saw? I said, what are you talking about? She's like, tall, dark, and handsome going down through there. I said, my husband's not here. He works over at ABIC. She's like, I'm talking about that fella that went down through there. I said, you're talking about the insurance dude? She's like, oh, is that what he is? I said, yeah. I didn't know she was married. I honestly thought she was single and looking. I said, well, if you need a phone number, I guess you could ask him for it. She goes, my husband probably wouldn't like that. I said, your husband probably wouldn't want you looking down through there, checking him out, saying, what's that there?
Look, that goes perfectly with the first sentence they have. It says spiritual laziness, immaturity, and carelessness in thought, in your thoughts. Not just the things that come out of your mouth, what you do, but your starting thoughts, and then it always ends up with your deeds, are signs of a heart problem. That's absolutely true. That lady, she should have restricted herself. If you're too lazy to say, oh, one, I don't need that drink today. I'm too lazy to say, I shouldn't look at that person today. That's an issue. That is immature. You got to get a grip. I know that's a term I use all the time. Get a grip. Get a grip. You're being lazy. And it says carelessness. You don't care who you're hurting in the process because you want immediate gratification. You want to stick your head out and watch that man walk down a hallway. That's laziness, that's immaturity, that is carelessness, and those are all three things that people can see in you from a mile away. They can see it in a heartbeat, and that does not testify to the goodness of God in your life and in your actions.
And going back to the whole porn thing, another fact that they gave, do you realize that on a pornography site, 130 million visitors every day? That's one pornography site. 130 million visitors. Guys, we need to start teaching and explaining how, no, if they love you, you're important enough to wait. You don't need to have this other stuff. You should only be eyeballing them. You know why I married my husband? Because I loved him. You know why I keep looking at him? Because I think he's beautiful. I think he's one handsome fella. I've had other women come up to me and say, your husband looks good. You know what I look back at them and say? I look at them and say, well, I think so also. That's why I married him. I think I've got great taste. Anyhow, James 1:13. Let no man say, this one is a big one. Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. Let me tell you this. God doesn't tempt you. It's the devil throwing stuff at you to see if he can distract you in whatever way. He might get you so upset that you feel like you have to have that cigarette. He might get you so nervous and on edge and just absolutely crazy back and forth. You need that drink to calm down. He might say, listen, you can't handle this on your own. If you don't take this pill over here, you are not going to get through this situation. You're going to unload on somebody, and then you're going to have to go back and fix everything that you messed up all at one time. Yeah, it's a mess. Janie, you had something you was going to say? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, get away from it. I do know people are like, well, this was taken over. Your pastor and myself, even when something as small as Instagram was taking too much time and too much of us being in there looking at stuff, that's when we were like, we got to delete this and replace it with Bible. because I need Bible more than I need Facebook. I need Bible more than I need Instagram. I need the Bible and the Word of God more than I need Snapchat. I need all of these things much less. I need the Bible. And I agree with that completely. But now I go farther than that from a teacher's point of view. That's where I go to the aspect of quit giving your kids everything under the sun to keep them occupied. Train them correctly. When they are in, I hear this a lot from parents. I don't know why my child is so good in your classroom. My expectations are you're going to be good in this classroom, period. I don't need to give them videos to watch. I don't need to give them games to play. I don't need to give them a cell phone to look at. I don't need to give them a handheld anything. For math, I don't even give them a calculator to use. They can use what I give them, and that's their mind and how to use their mind correctly. When they are in church, they need to listen to the teacher. They need to listen to the preacher. Jimmy said something the other day. He goes, shouldn't we offer free Wi-Fi? I said, no. He said, but that is such a thing out there nowadays. I said, I understand where you're coming from. I say no to free Wi-Fi. I even talked with our teenage teachers. I brought them a basket and gave it to them. I said, when the kids come into your classroom, have them put their phones in the basket. They do not need to be distracted. They need the Word of God. Starting at the age of 8 or 9, Leah was to be sitting up beside me listening to that preacher. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's right there is the start of instant gratification, even for children. They don't have to wait. They don't. I work in a behavior classroom, and our behaviors are worse whenever we start the day off with electronics because they can turn off what they don't want to look at when they want to. They can turn on what they want to when they want to, and they don't have to engage when they don't want to. And it's teaching a selfishness of I'm looking at what I want to. You're not looking at it with me. It's me by myself, and that's the start. Yeah. That is where that can all start.
God has expectations for us. He wants us to realize that He is the most important. Remember that, I believe it's a commandment that says that our God is a jealous God. There shall be what? No other gods before you. Now, I'm going to hurry up and stop talking because I'm going to go back here and hug Peggy in the biggest old bear hug. No, you're not. Guys, if you haven't seen Miss Peggy finally got here, yay! Don't touch her, please. All right, so it's a lot of pain. We're going to be stopping right here on this one because it is time. And I knew that on this one, it's such a big thing with society to realize, you know what, it's destructive. It can destroy. Sin will destroy. You can't allow it. You can't allow it to stick around. Get rid of it. Shut it out. All right? Our golden text, once again, is Proverbs 4:23. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Don't let that lack of diligence transfer to the next generation. If your kid comes across as being very distracted, okay, figure out what's distracting them. Refocus them on the right thing. It's not an easy job, but that's why God put us here so we can refocus. That's why you see when I have different kids around. That's why you see when I'm singing, if I ever come down and pick a kid up. I don't want the distractions away from God. So I'll just take them and let them stay with me. Hopefully they can enjoy that. Because we have a society that anything that little ones do, oh, it's cute, it's funny, look at them go. Guys, we don't need to be distracted from the Word.
We'll come back to this next week. I think, as Charlotte said, and she had an awesome point, the church has in the past done a bang-up job of explaining why we don't do this, why we don't watch pornography, why we don't watch these certain things. And if the church is going to do better, it's got to start with us. So we'll take a deeper dive in this, picking it back up next week. Let what we talked about be on your hearts and minds this week and show it in your actions, in your words, in your love. Okay?
God has you
Awesome.
here for a reason, guys. He loves you. And I'm glad that you're here. I hope you learned something. Now, say hey to